Hey, it's Dr. Charles, aka CoachMD here, coming to you on my Magical Monday live broadcast, which I like to do every noon on Mondays just to get our week off on the right foot. I missed last week as I was traveling, and I'm going to share with you one of my magical moments that happened last week. And why do I do this? I'm a doctor, and shouldn't I be doing doctor things? Well, as far as I'm concerned, this is very doctorish, okay? More doctors should be doing this because I believe in true holistic health. And what that means is identifying how we can balance and manage body, mind, and spirit. That's true holistic health. And please let me know where you're from, how long you've been following me. Usually Lynn from Canada is helping me with these broadcasts. She may not be able to do that today, so I promise that I will get to all the comments that you leave after the live broadcast, because it's hard to interact and do that at the same time. So I call it a Magical Monday broadcast because Mondays are so difficult for so many people, including myself, and getting off on the right foot means starting recognizing those magical things that happen in our everyday life. And what I'd like to talk to you today about is what I call daily magic and also near-death experiences. Well, what do they have in common? I'm going to get to that. But first, a little example of daily magic. I wasn't broadcasting last week because I was traveling, and as we were driving my daughter up from, she goes to school in the south, and we were driving up back to the northeast, and right around in Maryland, we took a detour. We got off the exit because she wanted to go to a particular restaurant. It turned out that restaurant, as we got off the exit, although it was advertised that that restaurant was about 7 miles off the exit, and that was just, forget it. We couldn't do that. So we turned around and got back on. And a few miles up the road, it turned out, on the highway, was the rest stop. And those of you who live in the United States know the rest stops off the highway are these big conglomerates where you have a lot of kind of fast food fare, and also there are some healthy options, which I assure you that we took advantage of. But when we got there, and after we took the detour, I was making note that everyone that we were seeing at that time was going to be new to us, that we would have never seen before if we hadn't taken that detour. Our paths were crossing at the precise time. And so everybody we were going to see was kind of like almost a magical interaction, if you'd say. People who see life the way I do would perceive it that way. Other people might say, it's just, you're passing by, you're not connecting. But I felt a strong feeling that I was going to be connecting on some level with those people at that rest stop at that time, because we had decided to take a detour. And so we got there. So anyway, we went through our little shopping, restroom stops, and this and that. And we're leaving, walking out of the rest stop. As we're leaving, walking out of the rest stop, I hear someone call my name. I look over. The woman brings up her sunglasses. It turns out this woman was a girl I knew when I was in high school. High school. That was a long time ago. And she recognized me. I recognized her. Luckily, except for I have a lot less hair than I did then. But I don't look that much different, and nor does she. So we recognized each other. And that, people ask me, well, daily magic, how do I know daily magic? Well, that to me is a big daily magic. We experience a lot of other more subtle coincidences, serendipitous events throughout our days and throughout our lives. This was a big one. What had to happen in her life, and what had to happen, the chain of events in my life, to make our paths intersect at precisely the time that they intersected? If it was off by a minute, a second, a few seconds, she would have been going in, I would have been going out at times where we would have never seen each other. To me, that is what elevates my trust in something greater than myself. It elevates my feeling, my connection with humanity. Those daily magical moments is what I do these broadcasts for, to help you recognize that it doesn't have to be a big one like that, but if you're open to it, they're more likely to happen. And I miss telling you something. When I went off that exit and we got back on, not only did I feel that we were going to see people that we would have never seen, and maybe never see again if we hadn't done that, but I also had a very strange sensation that I was going to meet up with somebody who I did know. And that was very strong in me. And that's because I'm open to that. And as we start this week off, be more open to that serendipity, to those coincidences that occur. Because nobody could run the odds, the probability of our paths crossing precisely at that moment. The odds of that happening are astronomical, because, as I said, what had to happen in her life and what had to happen in my life for our paths to cross at precisely that time? The odds are astronomical. So keep that in mind. And I want to share with you also something else to keep in mind to help elevate faith, to help elevate belief, to help elevate trust in something greater than ourselves that could actually be very important and very helpful in our day-to-day living. And it's called they're called near-death experiences, NDEs. Now, I know a lot of the skeptics out there, believe me, I know them. I was never that skeptical, but look, I'm a medical doctor. I have a lot of scientific training. So there is a cynic in me, definitely. There is a skeptic in me. But I am a little bit more open a lot more open than many of my colleagues are, or many other people who tend to be cynical and skeptical. So a near-death experience is something that people experience when their heart has stopped beating, when they basically have died. And they experience something that's very similar amongst them. Now, again, to address the skeptics and cynics out there, I don't know if anyone has heard of the University of Virginia. Well, the University of Virginia is an academic institution of very highly renowned academic institution. It has schools in law and medicine and science and psychology and philosophy. It is a major university, a very well-respected university. Well, guess what? This major university, the University of Virginia, has a department called the Department of Perceptual Studies. This department has been in existence for 50 years. And what do? They study near-death experiences, past life regressions, paranormal occurrences. So when I talk about near-death experience, I'm coming to that discussion from a scientific, if you will, background, or an academic background, and I have behind me an academic institution that also has investigated these things. So what got me on this kick, if you will, of near-death experiences? Well, several years ago, I read the book by Ibn Alexander, who's a neurosurgeon who had a near-death experience. Okay, a neurosurgeon. I think, I don't like to have a pecking order of who you can believe more and who's better than someone else. But when you talk about these kind of topics, it does help sometimes to have someone who would be less open to something like this, so therefore less biased. I also read the book or saw the movie Heaven is Real. And then one of my patients introduced me to a Dr. Oz segment where Dr. Alexander was there, was on set with another doctor, an orthopedic surgeon, who also had a near-death experience. And so I started looking into this, and then I talked with a friend who introduced me and told me about the University of Virginia, and so on and so forth. Anyway, what I've learned from now studying these near-death experiences is that they have a lot in common. What they have in common is that people are all don't have brain function. So it's not the fact that these brains are are somehow fabricating a very similar experience. Most of them, the majority of them, people describe as being bathed in a light and a feeling that they cannot describe. They cannot describe we don't have words to describe it. We don't have words to describe the love that's felt when these people die. But also what they have in common, what they describe when they die. Also what they have in common is that they can see what's going on. I have a patient, a police officer, who described to me his near-death experience about 6 or 7 years ago when he was in a motor vehicle accident. And what he described was very similar to what I'm now learning. Thousands of people describe this. We're not talking about one or two yahoos out there who are just coming up with and making things. No, we're talking about thousands and thousands of people who have described this. Now, a lot of people, you may have heard the discussion that we don't know what comes after we die because no one's lived and no one's died and come back to tell us. Well, guess what? Thousands of people have done that. Thousands of people have actually died and have looked down and described scenes that the only way they could ever know what was going on is if they had a bird's eye view, so to speak. There is something that's very grand about this. There's something that's very large. There's something much larger than ourselves. So when I talk about believing, trusting, and taking direction from something, for instance, like our inner guidance, that's something to be taken very serious because that's a glimpse. These daily magical occurrences that I described, one that I had, these are a glimpse because these defy the laws of probability and logic. And so does a near-death experience. Feeling bathed in a light, getting where time doesn't exist. The sensation of time doesn't exist. When we meet up with beings, as described, and again, these near-death experiences, what they all have in common is they're non-denominational. When people come back, they apply their experiences to their own personal belief system, which is fine. But from what I've discovered, they're non-denominational. These are of all ethnicities, all religious backgrounds, and this does not at all conflict with your religious beliefs. It actually solidifies it, because what it solidifies is that there is something out there, and the way we live is something greater than ourselves that defies logic or what we can't or anything that we can explain. So this is very vital. Because we are very physical beings. And when we get sick, we focus on the physical part of it. And when I talk a lot about the mind, body, and spirit and how our emotions affect our physical body, well, those emotions, that higher mind that we have, that is not our animal brain, what I call automatic or primitive nature. No, that higher mind is our connection with spirit, with a higher what people experience in those near-death experiences. And so when we have those daily magical occurrences, they are a little doorway, a little glimpse into what is beyond us. Because we are very, again, physical. It's all in our senses. It's all in our five senses, our daily lives. But if we could walk grounded, my saying is, you have to have both feet planted firmly on the ground before you reach for the stars. And that is true. We are here on earth alive, and we can't live in that near-death experience because our time hasn't come yet. But it should be a sense of relief when a loved one has died, that yes, there is something greater. And I encourage you to look more into this, because the more you look into these near-death experiences, the more I look into it, the more I believe and trust that how I've been living my life and what I've been talking about all these years is actually grounded in something very real. Not something we can explain easily or ever, but it's something that does exist. And when you walk through your life with that faith and that trust that if you really do those things that you know are the right things to do, that you are going to be living a life that is more akin to that love, that light that is engulfing you when your time comes. And it should also relieve some fear, because I know in my many years of medical practice, one of the greatest fears that people have, of course, is death. And if you can take away that fear of death, that can free up your life. So when you don't fear death, you can actually live. And it's very fascinating, and I can't get enough information about these near-death experiences. And there's one that many of you may have heard, Anita Moorjani. It was one book I just, Dying to Be Me, is one book I just finished. And her example is just one of thousands of examples. She became popularized by Hay House, but her example is one of thousands and thousands. And she's a dear soul. And her story can help so many people. And because her story is not only of her near-death experience, but her spontaneous remission when she came back of a life-threatening metastatic cancer which nearly killed her. So the fact that her near-death experience was followed by a spontaneous remission, which, again, there are hundreds of these, maybe thousands of these spontaneous remissions. Those are the things I want to know about. I don't want to, so many of my colleagues will say, oh, that happens, and then go and give the chemotherapy. Well, sometimes you need that. Yes, I'm not arguing with that. But the fact that somebody can have a spontaneous remission, I want to know what that's about. And so when you believe, trust, and take direction from something greater, what I call my inner guidance, what I pray and meditate to on a daily basis, that is the gateway to that something greater. So there is something greater that exists. When you walk your life and every day in that feeling of faith and trust, and love should be replaced by trust a lot of the times. Because when we really trust, it opens us up to be able to love more. And it's so important for you to be able to do that. It will open up your life. It will allow you to be more positive and get out of the negative spiraling that so much of our lives, expecting bad things to happen all the time. It can allow you, because the worst thing that can happen to most people is dying. If you ask a lot of people, is dying. That's the worst. That's like a punishment. But if you can understand that it isn't a punishment, and that there is something greater, and walk your life with that belief and trust, I can assure you it will elevate your health. It will not only elevate your health, it will elevate your happiness, and it will also open you up to being able to love more. Not only give love, but receive it. And if I don't know, if there's anything that can improve your health, that's it right there. And that's why I do what I do. So anyway, thanks for tuning in and stopping by today. I really appreciate it. Would be grateful to hear your comments. And also, it's a little a plug for my free, 100% free ebook, Fake News Stories by Your Brain. I've gotten some great feedback on it. It has helped a lot of people understanding this primitive nature of ours, this automatic animal nature of ours, which locks us in and blocks our access to that higher being, that greatness that's outside of ourselves, which is actually we can connect with internally through our inner guidance, which many of you call your guardian angels. But it's true, it's real, and there is proof if you need it. And it comes in those glimpses through the daily magic and through understanding and listening to those near-death experience stories, because they're more than stories. They're real, they happen to people, and it's very reassuring to me. So until next time, I'm Dr. Charles, aka CoachMD. Thanks for stopping by, and as always, I send my love to you. I love you, and God bless you. Bye for now.